time.
My Lords, so long down the list, and I'm still unsure what the purpose of the schools part of this bill is for. It prioritises tinkering with governance, focusing on fixing a problem that doesn't exist, i.e. stripping academies and free schools of the autonomy that's allowed so many of them to thrive, yet the bill avoids problems that need fixing, such as the huge challenges of discipline and behaviour in classrooms or the growing SEND crisis. And how can we scrutinise if the bill will fix problems when one of its key solutions is imposing a centralised new curriculum on academies, yet before we know what the curriculum contains? It's a cart before horse move. The government is not publishing its own curriculum review until the autumn, long after the bill is due to pass. And this curriculum review matters. When any government outlines what is taught, politicians reveal what they think schools are for. Are they places where we as adults pass on the historic body of canonic knowledge to new generations as an entitlement regardless of background or cultural identity, and notwithstanding important arguments about what constitutes the best that's known and thought? Or is this new curriculum a skills-based or therapeutic model in which knowledge is a mere second-order vehicle for the main goals of social mobility or social engineering? Recent curriculum overhauls by devolved governments should act as a warning. These allegedly child-centred experiments in disciplinarity, the Curriculum for Wales or Scotland's Curriculum for Excellence, if ever there was a misnomer, have both led to a disastrous collapse in attainment. And I'm not reassured by Professor Francis's interim review, with its focus on educating pupils through a social justice lens to reflect contemporary diversities. It sounds like a recipe for an EDI curriculum on stilts. Also, recently, Government advisor Professor Lee Elliott-Major described school trips to theatres, museums and highbrow arts galleries as elite middle-class pursuits, condescendingly suggesting more relevant art forms such as grime, rap and brass bands. What? For us plebs. Of course, I'm speculating based on my political preoccupations and prejudices, but I've got no choice but to speculate because we don't know the facts. But shouldn't we know before we impose that curriculum with no opt-out on all schools? I think we always need to study the detail when governments start issuing central diktats on what's taught. We need to guard against schools being used for politicised stunts or ideological manipulation. For example, was the Prime Minister's TV announcement that every school must screen the drama Adolescence really educationally motivated or even appropriate, especially as it potentially will mislead pupils about an important distinction between fact and fiction? I'm equally critical of the previous government's carelessness in allowing another fact-fiction conflation to become classroom orthodoxy. Children of all ages have been taught as fact that a person can literally change from one sex to another, due partly to poorly worded, centralised 2019 RSHE central guidance. Worse, parents' reasonable concerns about such lesson content has led for them to be chastised by teachers as bigots. This leads to my final point. I'm genuinely baffled about why this bill uses such disproportionate draconian regulatory powers to target homeschooling. Unlike others, I'm less of a fan of homeschooling per se. It sometimes seems a bit odd, but I'm more worried about this bill undermining important principles and freedom. The state don't own children, and it needs to be wary of overreach and mission creep into families. That's why historically parents have the right to choose how their children are educated. I'm afraid this bill's intrusive data collection and monitoring that insultingly conflate home education with safeguarding risk is a bit of a cheek. Can I just remind us of that terrible moment at the moment, the safeguarding record of the state acting as a parent in children's homes? Please don't mention the grooming gangs, but I'm going to. I wouldn't trust them. I do trust parents, and I hope this bill can look very carefully at that undermining of parental autonomy.